I also just see all reactions as jazz. It's just the musicians just start playing. Well, the movie is one musician and the reactor is the other musician, or if you have two reactors, and they're just whatever their reaction is their reaction. You don't want to try and curate the reaction. You just want to you don't want to give them too much information. You're trying our best to create as authentic reactions as possible, because that's what I want to see, and that's what I feel like every single person on your channel that I've seen you interview, like, all have in common: authenticity and empathy.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Reactorverse Podcast as we close out the year with a very special guest, Jason Dolan, curator and creator of the channel Popcorn Roulette. Jason, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Of course. We finally figured out our time zones. We had a meeting scheduled before, and we sort of, the Eastern Pacific time thing. So it was for the loop, as it is with the holidays,
East Coast, West Coast, East Coast, West Coast, yeah.
Yeah. But Jason, you are essentially, what some might describe as, the man in the chair for the channel Popcorn Roulette. It's a large channel that features, a healthy rotation of reactors on it, watching a good number of, films and shows. I'm always curious, with this sort of dynamic, because it's become a more common thing with certain channels to have, the on-screen talent and then the sort of like, behind the scenes sort of manager that running things. And it's a good, healthy dynamic, I think, if you can find that balance to help out everyone. So, and it does avoid burnout a little bit. For you, being the channel manager, I usually found people in those positions serve as a great foundation, because they are usually the ones, well versed in films, while the others are having, their new experience with it on camera for the first time. So to go all the way back to the beginning, I guess for you, what is your sort of personal background with TV and film?
With TV and film in the industry, or in relation to the reaction channel?
In the industry, I guess. So your own personal sort of, experience with it growing up, and then if you have an industry experience, yeah.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I grew up in my father was in the Air Force, so I grew up on military bases, and I was for all intents and purposes the only child. My parents had older children from previous marriages, so I really grew up watching a lot of TV. The TV in the 80s, the TV was my babysitter, and in Atlanta, after my dad retired, we moved to Atlanta, and, there was something of a TV industry here. I got into theater. I studied acting at the Alliance Theater here. I did some TV movies, background work, this, Civil War epic called Andersonville, which had like Biff from Back to the Future and Justin Henry from Kramer versus Kramer and Frederick Forrest from Apocalypse Now, and getting to kind of see all these actors work in this big Civil War ensemble that like lasted for 3 months, and then moved to New York and got a job working for this producer, who Martin Pohl, who did The Lion and Winter with Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn. And while we were there, we did the remake with Patrick Stewart and Glenn Close, and then screenplay with a buddy of mine, and we sold that to Fox, and then joined the WGA, and then I just kind of pursued film. Had a movie made with Scott Eastwood and Catherine Waterston that we sold to Lionsgate in 2012. That was just super, super low budget, and produced some, and then just produced. I was producing, what I kind of call micro budget features. Then my buddy, who I wrote my script with, he won the Oscar, and then we did the feature length version of that short film. He won the Oscar for best live action short film. Then the script that we sold way back in 2006, he ended up directing, and we premiered at Sundance. And, so I was just going, and I was writing other scripts and prepping to direct. I directed a short film on the channel called Possessions, just something fun. And that was sort of how I actually met Kobe, who was really, one of the first, people, one of the first reactors for Popcorn Roulette. But, the pandemic happened, and that kind of changed everything. And also in 2014, my father suffered a stroke, and my mom passed away. And so I came back to Atlanta from LA. I lived in New York for 10 years, LA for 7 years, then came back to take care of my dad. And I take care of my dad full time. And I was like, well, Atlanta still has a great film industry here, so I'm going to still just keep trying to make films here. But I remember 2015, The Force Awakens came out, and that trailer You remember that trailer, right?
Yes, absolutely.
And it was so exciting for somebody of my generation who grew up in the 80s watching Star Wars, and really formative. And this kind of, really felt like, the original characters coming back, all that. And I just watched that trailer over and over and over again. And then I eventually started getting suggested by the algorithm people watching the trailer. And I remember I watched this one that was like John Campea and John Schnepp and Christian Harloff, and they're all gathered on a couch watching that trailer. And then I just started watching more and more people watching the trailer. And that was how I discovered the Real Rejects, Greg Alba. I got a meeting with Christian Harloff and kind of talked with him and watched a Schmodown be taped and became friends with Greg. Greg just literally invited me to his house for his birthday party. I went there. I met a lot of the YouTube personalities that I've been seeing on Collider and Schmodown. And it was, just kind of like learning the universe. And I just kind of started learning from Greg. And Greg had me on his channel a couple of times. And and that was sort of my introduction into the world of reacting. It really and it was like trailer reacting, and I was kind of started dabbling with it. And then I remember in 2019, I don't play video games at all, but I was a big Star Wars fan, so I wanted to watch somebody play the Fallen Jedi video game.
Right.
So I found this person doing it so I could kind of watch the game, and they also had reactions to like the original Star Wars movies, that they had never seen before. And I was like, wow, this is like a dopamine hit.
Right.
Getting to feel all these things, and it's the old adage of like, I mean, it's even an episode of How I Met Your Mother, but it's like, having your girlfriend sit down and showing her Star Wars for the first time, and they don't like it or they fall asleep watching it or whatever. And this was like for the first time, I was like, oh, this person's watching the whole movie. They're paying attention. They're feeling the feels. And that was, truly, and then the pandemic hit. And I was like, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try and do this do full movie reactions. Then I had a friend of mine who we started this channel called Kazi Reacts in September of 2020. Our first content was like the Batman trailer from the DC con. And we just started kind of doing movies.
I know. I mean, it's Star Wars is a staple of the reaction experience, I think, for a lot of channels. It's a good, obviously big franchise that people have known, throughout their whole life, whether they watch it or not. So it's always a fun experience to watch it through their eyes. But it's funny, we have similar adjacent, experiences with that introduction. I'm good friends with Christian and Greg. At this point, I was the editor for the Schmodown for several years. And I, got to know them and find, like you said, the space through them and the sort of roster of people that was involved with that, particularly, like Late to the Party, who are competitors on there and their channel now, who are very good friends. And they started their channel with that Force Awakens trailer as well. So it's all kind of, a big sort of cyclical nature for that experience for a lot of people. No, you're right, though. But the pandemic, obviously, was a huge catalyst for the growth in the space and, how people sort of entered it, particularly with like the availability that they had.
TBR Schmidt, who's been on your channel, yes. I remember he started his channel the same month I started Kazi Reacts. So I was we kind of found, and it was one of those people that we found, and then seeing just some of the other, like Natalie Gold, I really was a big fan of. And obviously Greg is amazing, who was your first guest on the podcast I saw. And a lot of the people that you've had on are just people that I've watched, and some people I'm like, oh, I've never heard of them. Maybe I'll go check out their channel.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. That's kind of, what we're aiming for here. But no, TBR Schmidt is great. I actually just spoke to them yesterday. We're doing one of our quizzes that we also do another show that we have on here. So it was a lot of fun. But getting into the channel itself, you mentioned, the pandemic playing a role in that. Can you recall what your pandemic experience was like and how that impacted or influenced your ability to get the channel going?
I mean, we were all at home. We were watching a lot of stuff. I mean, I was in my house. I've been editing for a long time, and I knew Premiere pretty well. And I actually called up John from Real Rejects, and I was like, "What's the what's the software for this? What do I need to do for that?" He was so helpful setting me up or whatever. And I just kind of started just testing it a little bit, and then it was just finding a person that could just come stay at my house full time. And a really good friend of mine who who would also like, who I knew would be good and doing reactions, who was an empath, and that would commit to the process, and so, she came and we just started doing it. There's a lot of, things that we had to learn, and one of the things I pride myself on, never lost a recording.
Right, that can happen.
Until way later, and that was when we did like a shot of reaction at the drive-in, which was just outside of the environment. But
right,
when we were trying to get reactions to things, it was just a lot of trial and error. And then ultimately, Greg connected me with Proper Media and to help with the editing. And I kind of began. I was like, I think was literally one of their first clients, and with Kazi Reacts. But then kind of throughout the process of that channel, one of the issues that I was just kind of noticing was like, well, we can't do a reaction to this because she's already seen it. Can't do a reaction to that because she's already seen it, and then ultimately she was similar age to me, and, her health was, just prohibiting her from filming at the growth rate that we really needed to do. And ultimately we just took a break from that channel. And I kind of like put the reaction channel stuff behind me, and I kind of went back into, as the whatever world was opening back up, trying to do films again. But I always knew if I was ever going to do another reaction channel, I was going to have rotating reactors, so that I could make sure that the channel could have a reaction for every movie ever made. And potentially we could do multiple reactions to some great films like Star Wars, and then be able to kind of do our own little in-channel, like, Kobe reacting to this part of Empire Strikes Back, Nikki reacting to it, Mia reacting to it, all into one little video. I'm sure you've seen other channels kind of pulling all these reactions together to a singular moment, which we've been included in that, and we're grateful to be included. It's like any way you can learn about our channel, we're down for that.
Right. Building out the roster is obviously a huge staple of what the channel is now, and you have like I said, an eclectic number of guests to come on and share their unique experience from film to film, even if it's the same film. Like I say, with every reaction channel, it's always different. It's a different experience because everyone's going to interact with it differently. And I guess building out that roster, do you have any? Did you have any criteria of who you were sort of looking for, like what you were sort of hoping to achieve with who you're going to bring on?
Yeah, sort of the structure that I just kind of developed was that I was going to give everybody 5 reactions to sort of see if they had it or not. And we have some reactors that were just didn't continue on but tried it out. Right. And then for the, but generally speaking, like I was just looking for people that, there's a lot of different styles of reacting. There's people that talk a whole lot, and there's people that don't talk a whole lot, and we have kind of a variety of that. So we're kind of scratching that particular itch, depending on what you like in regards to just the amount of commentary versus just sort of more of a diligent study of what you're watching. So ultimately, I just, I meet people in real life, and I just think you'll be good for this. I met James, who just started reacting for us last spring at the Atlanta Film Festival, and we were just talking about movies and stuff. And she was like, I haven't seen that, and I haven't seen that. And her personality, just in meeting her, I was like, you want to try this? And she's turned out to be like kind of, really growing into one of our most consistent, reactors, as far as just, view counts for like a new reactor. And that's it. And then it's just, then it just becomes a matter of scheduling everybody to kind of come in, and everybody also has other jobs too. This is not anybody's full-time job. I'm, even it's, with me, my full-time job is actually taking care of, my father. And this is something I can do, parallel to that creatively, just to kind of keep the creative juices flowing. And then I just think, creating, more awareness for some of these amazing films. Because we'll do Star Wars, but then I'll also do like My Own Private Idaho, and I'll do like films that are much more less watched, just to kind of get those, people thinking about those again, So yeah, that's the goal, is to be able to, do the bigger films to sort of support the channel financially, but also then, do the smaller films. And then also we have a great Patreon community that
Mhm.
is, you know, sponsors specific reactions to more obscure films, which is awesome.
Yeah, yeah. That's I mean, that's the luxury of any healthy reaction channel that's able to get their footing, is to be able to branch out, watch more unique films, more niche films,
Mhm.
and having everyone involved helps, because you can have that balance. You can figure out a good rotation of, like, oh, we'll have a large film here to support the smaller ones. So almost like running like a theater in a sense,
Yeah, or a
the
studio even,
blockbusters.
it's like
Yeah, exactly.
these big tentpole beat features pay for all of, these smaller, what is it, Fox Searchlight, 20th Century Fox paid for Fox Searchlight slate,
Exactly.
Um, so that's, what we kind of try and do there. But the other thing is that with our reactors, it's like, because it's a rotating, and we went from literally, like, this is the other thing, we went from like one video a month to two videos a month to one video a week to two videos a week to three videos a week to a video every other day. And then since June, we've been releasing a video every single day, And because I have such a great roster now of people that are just always creating content, now we have so much content, we're able to kind of meet that demand.
Right.
But even for some of the reactors, it's, they can create even more content than what I can even host. And so a couple of them have gone on. Kobe has started her YouTube channel, The Kobe Show, which has over 60,000 subscribers. And, she's, releasing at least 3 videos a week. And she's had such great success with that channel. And she still shoots for us. She's shooting Community for us right now, which is super awesome. And she's going to shoot some of the Marvel stuff for us, continuing that. But then everything else she kind of does on her channel. And that was what was great for her. It gave her a, a steady income, so that while she's simultaneously pursuing, feature films as an actress. And then even from the reaction channel, she was seen by somebody and was auditioned and was cast in a film that she shot last year.
Oh, wow.
So
That's fantastic.
and then Cami has Let's Tune In, and then Leah and Nikki started their channel recently, Wind It Back, so, which is more dual reactions, and then they're starting to do dual reactions for us. The amazing thing about doing this, you get great sponsors like Valencia, Tuscany, love seats, like gave us, like, we just had like a chair, they gave us a love seat.
Yeah.
Now we can do dual reactions, and
Right.
that's it's awesome. You just start doing it, and then you just sort of start to see, things that you wouldn't even think about. Like, it's like, how am I going to afford this? Like, just kind of the universe providing for you, through the channel, which is great. And
Yeah,
which grow.
Of course, yeah, it helps you, build that momentum, and you start, snowballing your way up hills in a sense, and it's great to see everyone sort of, branch out. You're really building, your own sort of little, multiverse of channels, or like Popcorn Roulette universe of everyone sort of having their own spin-offs in a sense. But the individuals themselves, Kobe and Leah and everyone, I usually ask this for channel partners and stuff like that. I just want to ask, how did you meet? I guess like the current roster of people who are involved with the channel.
Yeah, Cami, I met at the Atlanta Film Festival. Kobe and I had many mutual friends in Los Angeles, but I was doing this short film Possessions, which is on the channel, and I just kind of like messaged her on Instagram, I think, and was just like, "Hey, she had just done something. She just done something, and I commented on it. She just released like a music video she was in,
right?
And I was like, "You're great. I'd love to work with you. And I've got this short film." I sent it to her. She came out here, and we shot that short film in summer of 2022. And then we just really became good friends. And then she would come out here, and she would go to Australia to visit her family. And I'd watch her dog for Cash, who many of the people that are familiar with Kobe know who Cash is as well. But we would watch movies together, and I would just see her reactions to certain things, and I was like, and I told her about the reaction channel I'd done in the past. And I was like, "Do you think you'd be interested in doing that?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And once Kobe kind of committed, then she had like left and went away. And I just started developing the reaction channel with some friends, and I brought in a ton of people and just shot reactions with them. And Cami and Jonathan, who's on the channel, really stood out. And I really kind of started heavily with the two of them, and then Kobe kind of coming in, and then Mia joined the channel. I met Mia on set of a short film. Jonathan, I rent a room to in my house. He's an actor here in Atlanta, so and it's just good to have another person in my house for my dad or whatever. If I have to go out of town, somebody to just make sure he hasn't fallen or something. And then Nikki was actually the hair and makeup on Possessions, the short film I did with Kobe, and she was like, "I'm a huge Reaction Channel fan," and I was like, "Oh, cool." She was already watching tons of them, and Leah was Nikki's roommate, and like Nikki had introduced Leah to Reaction Channels. They were watching Harry Potter reactions, and Leah just came over, and once again she just started off with Rebel Without a Cause and Whiplash, and she was just and then she's just so committed to shooting all the time, and so we're doing Friends, and and then like I said, and then James I met at the Atlanta Film Festival, and then Nicolette is also on the channel, and Nicolette is somebody that is a WGA writer that lives in town here that I had met at a birthday party, and we became friends, and then she's just super busy, so she did like the Back to the Future trilogy, and it was amazing, but she's just so busy. But she's just now kind of started to come in and try and start shooting again. But her best friend, who I met over the summer, is from New Zealand but lives in LA, and this is Deb, who's just started on our channel, and she's like self-taping out in LA. And then Kobe self-tapes all her reactions and sends them. So people come into the studio, but also everybody's kind of learning how to self-tape. So eventually people could just, and that's kind of the goal even of the channels, like people out there that maybe want to do this, that self-tape reactions and send them into us. And if they're good, maybe we'll put them on the channel, and, kind of like popping in or whatever, because we, so, there's, there's no, with regards to the future of the channel and the reactors, like I hope that it just continues to evolve, and that people are able to kind of start their own channels out of it. Like we, come in, we have our audience already there, people see them start their channel. Like I know Nikki and Leah's channel was 5,000 subscribers in 24 hours, so anybody that wants to do it and take that on, that responsibility, like, that's awesome, and hopefully people will love them and then come back to our channel to find their original reactions to what they did for us, which is great for us too. It's very, symbiotic.
Yeah, of course. And it's, like I said, a good way to, spread out, cover more territory with everyone, but also support each other. Just like you said, support each other, help people have the tools to, try this out themselves on their own channels if they need to. Once you had everyone, all your ducks in a row with everyone being involved, they're recording, multiple reactions at a time. Did you have early on any sort of strategy for the rollout of content you wanted, and has that changed or evolved over time?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, we started with one a month, and it was just consistency more than anything else. I was just like, you got to consistently release content. And but yeah, like with Kobe, I was like, we're doing Star Wars, 4, 5, and 6. Then we're going to do the prequels. Then we're going to do the sequels. Then we're going to do the Star Wars stories. Then we're going to do Obi-Wan. Like with Leah, I started her off, like I showed her Duel, then I showed her Jaws, then I showed her Jurassic Park, then Close Encounters. And so I'm taking her on this whole huge Spielberg journey. For Nikki is watching every single Tim Burton. So, and I'm just doing this, for my own personal, like, I just really, it's like Tarantino always says, it's like, I'm just making these movies for me. And if anybody else enjoys them, great. And that's how this channel is, the way I see this channel. Although we love Paul Dano on this channel. And, but, I'm just doing what I want to see for the most part. But, if I hear, people sponsor reactions on Patreon, I'll do those things as well. And then if I see like a lot of people want something or asking for something, I'll definitely do it. But, for example, with James, like I showed her Platoon, and then I showed her Naked Gun just so she could get the Platoon joke.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm really always trying to set up my reactors, curate with what I show them so that like they might get something. They very rarely recognize the actor though that I set up, because they're like, they're 24, 48, 62, 35. Like they're jumping all back and forth. I was watching this interview with Ethan Hawke, and he was talking about showing his kids White Fang, and an hour into the movie, they're like, when are you showing up?
Right.
I didn't know he's not that person anymore.
Right.
It's kind of the same with actors that I just showed Leah Mystic River so she could see Tim Robbins, and then I showed her we're doing Moonlighting. The second episode of Moonlighting, like Tim Robbins is in it. Didn't
Right.
recognize her all that.
Yeah. Sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't.
30-year gap, but then Leo will be watching like Silence of the Lambs, and the girl that Buffalo Bill, cat kidnaps, she's like, oh, that's so and so from Grey's Anatomy.
Right. Yeah.
So what's interesting, they do have this knowledge, and it's all comes from television more than movies, I think. Which is one thing that I've seen that a lot of people have seen a lot more TV than they've actually seen these films that influence the TV they watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is a common occurrence. I've noticed through some other channels as well. Like the TV knowledge does build a foundation for them. I really love that. I love your ability with your background in film to help guide them on their journey. With some of the channels I help out with, I do similar things. I think obviously Star Wars is an easy one. Sort of like hey, you watch this first in this order, because it'll help you give context for this thing later. One thing I would like to do for some channels is if they're going to go on like a horror movie journey. I like to if they're going to watch Scream, I want to make sure they can watch all the films that are referenced in Scream.
Friday the 13th, Halloween, Psycho,
Nightmare on Elm Street, Carrie. Yeah,
I'm looking at that right now. I have a reactor, and I'm like, I need this. Do we really need to do Prom Night? Probably not.
Yeah, it's one thing. So Cabin in the Woods is one that's like also I like to do that for, but that's a huge endeavor to try and get a lot of those references and fit.
A good friend of mine plays Marty in that, actually.
Oh, really? Yeah, friends. That's great. Yeah, I love him.
Yeah, I'm always like trying to get him to you should do a reaction.
Yeah. He's great. I love it. I love it as an actor. Once you had everything going in that first year, again, starting in a little bit of the sort of quote unquote post-pandemic era, do you recall any major obstacles or learning curves in that first year, just getting everything started?
Oh, sure. I mean, just copyright claim and just understanding that and what the tricks are to get through it. And, I think John at Real Rejects, or no, Greg, probably one of the two of them, they were like just 7 seconds or less, was a good rule of thumb for the movie clip, and little things like that, and then, music and how much music you can use. And then just, boy, I had to the second I started the YouTube channel, I was like, well, I need to buy a new computer right now. And I immediately had to buy a computer, a new computer to do this. And no, actually still, this is it right here. And it's shut off now, but it's still the same one I bought in 2020. It's still going strong. But that, so software and how are you going to record it? And, we started off, I think with that first reaction channel, it was just sort of girl on a couch with a lot of cool, toys, memorabilia and posters, which, behind her. But then with Popcorn Roulette, I did start with Popcorn Roulette. And you kind of notice those two channels have the same futons and some of the same props. But I just kind of went to green screen, which is what TBR Schmidt was doing. And I just really appreciated, and so figuring out what your style was going to be, was a big part of it, and just, and that's it, and like I said, it's just, and then the editing is just, it takes forever. And, finding, really good, competent editors like Praper Media was just a game changer for us, and I couldn't do what I do without those guys. I just don't have the time to, I would be two or three a month if I was doing all the editing myself.
Right. Yeah. Shout out to Praper, as Greg and everyone always shouts out. I work with them pretty closely over on his channel, so I know I know how much work they put into it.
They're the best.
Yeah.
I will say also, just going back to how being experimental too is also sometimes good and sometimes bad, because I had Kobe do the Indiana Jones saga in chronological order. So I started her with Temple of the Doom, and then went to Raiders, and then went to Last Crusade, just because I was like, why not? You know what I mean? This is it'd be fun to have that sort of thing. And while some people were on board with what I did, the vast majority were like, how dare you?
Yeah.
And I will say, as somebody that grew up in the 80s, so many of my friends saw Temple of the Doom first because they were too young for Raiders, but then they were old enough to see Temple of Doom, and their parents just took them to see it.
Right.
Not realizing it was going to be nightmare fuel and create the PG-13 rating, but and then they would see Raiders, either sometimes in the they do special screenings at theaters but on HBO basically. So I did know a lot of my friends growing up that saw Temple of Doom first and then Raiders of the Lost Ark second. So I stand by my curation of that particular watch order, but I'm not, but you can't do episode 1, 2, and 3, and then do 4, 5, and 6. Like it's too, although maybe we will do that one day for the hell of it. But generally people don't like it.
Yeah, again, like you, that's the luxury that you have. I mean, you're sort of like, pulling the strings here. You can experiment with that if you want. You might see how someone's, experience might be with that, just for your own sort of pleasure of seeing how that might impact someone.
But I bring all that up to also just talk about, the comment section, and just sort of, that's a huge part of the channel and the psychological impact that a lot of these comments can have on the reactors, and I have to really just tell the reactors, like, don't comment to something that you think is mean or whatever, or anything that's super mean, we're going to remove. But, you got to just, you just got to deal with the criticism, it's just part of it, and if you're going to be an actor, you're going to sometimes find out that a world famous director hates you. If you're going to be a director, you're going to sometimes find out that the whole world hates your movie, so, because I'm not going to catch every mean comment or whatever, but like just making sure that they're feeling like they're being taken care of and looked out for online, and developing a community that will eventually self-police. To that extent, we have a lot of amazing people on our channel that just kind of self-police the mean comments themselves. And then I think that also psychologically is great for the reactors, just to sort of, because there's going to be, whatever, you're faking this reaction, you totally missed that he was in the Marines. You totally missed that. You thought he was in the Air Force. It's like every time I watch a movie, I miss things the first time. And the second, I just feel like I'm downloading the movie and the experience. And then I watch the movie again and I'm like, okay, now I really understand it. So we're asking so much of these reactors in the first place, just to like, and to that extent, they are like sitting there watching the movie, a camera's on them, there's nothing else, there's no distraction. So that does, and that's the third thing or fifth thing or whatever thing I'm on, but creating the environment for the reactor to really be able to watch the movie and give you the best possible reaction, making sure they've got drinks, making sure they've got coffee, Celsius, something to drink, something to eat, but don't eat during the reaction. But learning all of those little things, like what people don't, it's like people want to see people eating popcorn. No, they don't. So, creating a dynamic where the reactor has to go to the bathroom, we can pause the movie and they can go to the bathroom and come back and start the movie up again. That it's just, there's nothing that's ever going to distract them. It's going to give them the focus of being able to create, hopefully, this great reaction to this film that many, many people love, and that can go out. And I just think that psychologically, like creating these reactions is just, it's one of the positive things of the internet, for people that, don't have the opportunity to spend time with friends because they're working all the time or this reason or that reason. And they can watch a movie with somebody that they get to know as a personality online, the laugh track personality, almost,
Right. No, I 100% agree. I mean, it's why I, really love the space and I support it. I do think it's one of the very shining corners of the internet because, like you said, it gives people, companionship, with some of their favorite art that they can, engage with. But likewise, it also just gives people a platform. And I really find it pretty endearing that the reaction space has a, uniquely large, like female demographic of women who have channels and have dedicated fan bases. And I think it's a really unique state in the internet that we have today that people can go online and want to listen to what a woman says about art, to what a person of color says about art. And I think it's a format that, invites people to listen to them to be engaged and really respect their opinion on what it is. And so I think that's a really beautiful way to spread, just a goodness on the internet in a sense.
I mean, I find myself, and I consider myself to be an extreme film aficionado. I've been watching. I haven't seen every movie, but I have 3,000 log films on my letterbox. I've seen a lot. And I remember seeing a reaction to Seven, and the person was like, the first three victims were men, and then the third three victims were women. And it was like, wow, I never noticed that before, that the victims were even equally divided up, and it was just little tiny things like that is just what I love about watching any of these videos that dissect the movies that we love on the internet. Just like, wow, that's an interesting thing. I never, and so I find myself constantly learning. I almost like look at it as like, you're learning from your children or whatever kind of thing or whatever. And just people that don't have the same experience level as you. I feel like a coach and they're like the star quarterback, and that's sort of the dynamic, and I'm just trying to give them my experience as to what is good to watch, but I also just see all reactions as jazz. You don't want to. It's just the musicians just start playing. Well, the movie is one musician and the reactor is the other musician, or if you have two reactors, and they're just whatever their reaction is their reaction. And I just think that you don't want to try and curate the reaction. You just want to you don't want to give them too much information. You don't want to you just want. But you don't want to you can't, you just have to be like, that's what the reaction was. Like sometimes I have a reactor watches a movie and they're just like, I hated that movie. And I just threw the reaction when I didn't use it. I've had some reactors turn the movie off in the middle of it and be like, I hate this. And I'm like, great. You hate it. No problem. I'll give it to somebody else, and then I'll give it to somebody else and they love it, and that's what movies are. They're all subjective. And and also it's just, hopefully I'm showing everybody good movies so nobody ever has to truly fake a reaction that they like something they didn't like. That's why I sort of tell people, it's like, if you don't like it, truly, no problem. We can scrap it, for any reason, for any number of, uncomfortable reasons with the subject matter of the film, or the accent is terrible or something like, or you hate this actor's performance, or it's just driving you crazy. So, that is the big thing, though, is just trying our best to create as authentic reactions as possible, because that's what I want to see. It's like, I want to see. And that's what I feel like every single person, on your channel that I've seen you interview, like all have in common, is just authenticity and empathy. Because hopefully because that's what it is. That's what I love about movies. We're feeling what this person is feeling in this situation. Bruce Willis in Die Hard, this failing relationship that we can all relate to, with this human grounded thing with these larger than life circumstances, but feeling the weight of that actual real thing that is going on in his life. And I think that's what's great about movies. It really just help us think about experiences that we wouldn't normally think about, because we don't have that personal experience. And like, to your point, seeing women react to things differently than men usually watch, how men react to something is a big, vast difference, for the most part. And I think it's a productive thing for people to see these emotions.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. It's, interesting to watch everything through their eyes, because the reaction format, again, specifically on the internet that we have today, it is a sort of open-minded format that asks the participants to go in with sort of a blank slate of like, just give you the material all the goodwill that you can to just engage with it on its level. Whereas, a lot of, things on the internet, particularly within pop culture discourse, the algorithm has sort of shifted so that cynicism is like a huge selling point of like how you engage with something. Channels go into it with like, thumbnails or titles, like aimed towards like, like sort of tweaking like a part in your brain that's like, what's wrong with this thing. Whereas reaction channels, I do like that everyone goes into it with like again, goodwill to try and just like, take in the film as it's trying to present itself to you, whether you like it or not. You keep it authentic. That experience will differ from person to person, but you at least give it a chance, which I think is something that we're sort of lacking today with a lot of people's engagement with certain material.
I mean, we're also just in the dawn of reactions in the first place, and just the part that they're going to play in, the future of how content is distributed, like online, and even with regards to, I see, I've seen, like, this is example of like Tom Holland and Zendaya reacting to the trailer of Spider-Man No Way Home or something like that, and it's even trying to bring it a little bit in, and just, I just liken it to like a movie star would never do television. And, now movie stars do television all the time, and then, and then, at some point, then you like social media, and even, YouTube channels, didn't like Brie Larson just started a YouTube channel during the pandemic. You just don't know, I go back to like, and Zach Braff doing Kickstarter, like to finance his movie. And truly, like, Netflix is Kickstarter, where they just they get all these subscriptions and then they finance movies with it, and then Disney is doing it with Disney Plus, and then Warner Brothers with HBO Max, and they're that's a lot. It's like we're prepaying now for the content that we're getting in the movie theaters. It's just and it's just changed. It's just been interesting to study all of that stuff, like post pandemic and pre-pandemic. But in this space, like, it's hard to know, what it's going to evolve into, as just people grow up really watching reactions to movies, separate from just, and then they can watch the movies themselves. And then the best thing is going over to a Patreon channel and just syncing up and doing the full watch along, which is actually the only way I do reactions. I rarely watch a YouTube reaction. I support my specific reactors that I love, and I just do those full watch alongs with them because I need to relearn that movie for my own channel, or I just love that movie and just like want to see the reaction to it.
No, you're totally right. Again, like the reaction space, started as, fans reacting to large material, studio material that, they were, wanted to engage with. And now it's starting to give back a little bit, like another channel that I know well, you boy Roshi, they just got invited to the Game Awards the other night. And they got to meet the developers of, Expedition 33. And they told them that we had your reactions on TV while we were making the game and stuff like that. So it's that small thing that, they started out as fans of the stuff, and now they can influence it in a way that, might be abstract right now. But again, like you said, like a generation from now, there'll be people growing up in positions of, industry influence or power that, grew up with these things, and like it might affect the way they saw the material, and hopefully in a positive way, as we've been, talking about,
Well, there's the famous story of like Popcorn in Bed, who like Tom Cruise was watching the reaction to Mission Impossible on the set for Fallout, I think, on the set of Final Reckoning, and then invited them to the premiere, and they got to interview him and meet him. And, and Tom Cruise is nothing if not like a movie fan, and a ton of movies, and it's like, and, when you watch like these actors on actors things, and, or just any, just any SAG interview with actors or whatever, and you just realize that, most actors are just people and filmmakers and directors, and really everybody, just people that loved movies and loved watching movies, So, that's, the audience is not limited. I mean, I'm a Braves fan, and I grew up with Chipper Jones would do, like, while I was on the road, he would write movie reviews of the movies he was watching in the hotel, and I was just like, movies, it's such a universally connective tissue, and I just think the evolution of society. I remember watching Malcolm X for the first time, and that was really like my introduction to like who Malcolm X was, and going and being like, maybe I should go read the autobiography of Malcolm X, and just seeing what Denzel Washington could do with that role, and and just education, and that's the most awesome thing, is like I get to sit here and kind of educate my friends and show them whatever movies I want, and then create these things for people like myself who are, collectors or, appreciators of the arts, to enjoy this stuff and kind of and form these relationships, and, with these reactors online, and just kind of, like you said, create these communities. And sometimes you're connecting, with random person in Iceland. Sometimes you're connecting with Tom Cruise in Africa. You just never know.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, Roger Ebert, said movies are, like it's like a machine that builds empathy, like you mentioned. And, it does, ask the viewer to put themselves in like, shoes and positions that they otherwise wouldn't be able to experience. But likewise, those experiences, I think, get enriched through the viewers and the commenters saying like, yes, this actually happened to me. Like my parents went through this, or, like I know someone who went through this. And that really makes it real, I think, to them as, the reactors watching the film, is that these aren't just stories in the ether. Like these are things that, are come from real world experiences. And that, I think that helps them ground them in, how they want to engage with it.
Yeah, 1,000%, 1,000%. I mean, wasn't Indiana Jones like all of our introduction into what World War II was, when we were little kids? And
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. But, mentioning the evolution of the space itself, I guess, with everyone involved with the channel, how have, you seen them grow with, their experience with the channel in terms of like their literacy or relation with film?
Listen, I think it's just a matter of everybody getting comfortable in front of the camera. And so certainly, it's different levels of comfortability. And then just being able to say the thing you want to say in the moment that you want to say it, kind of thing. So, I do think to a certain extent, it's like, just to see people, I just think anybody that watches more and more films just grows and becomes more intelligent, and just has a giant frame of reference for real world history and pop cultural reference, and these are extremely important things in communication and just being a developed human being alive, that the more knowledgeable you are, just the more productive, and happier person I ultimately, well, some education, so the more sometimes they've said brings depression, and the less brings, ignorance is bliss, but not in the case of cinema. But no, I mean, so in that sense, I just seen just over the years, and like, but let me just single out Kobe in particular as somebody that came in, shot the reactions, and then bought a camera, literally actually bought like all this camera equipment, shot this entire documentary, rented an SUV, drove across country with her parents from Australia, and she's editing that now. But when she did that documentary, she had all this film equipment and she just started filming herself, and then just got to the point where she learned Premiere, and then she's making her thumbnails, and then she's, editing and building the full watch alongs, and has her Patreon, and got an editor, and knows how to, it started with, me, like filming her reactions and sending them to my editor, and then her slowly taking the reins. Cami, exact same way. Like, I'm not involved at all in her channel, Let's Tune In. She's got her own edit. I an editor reach out to me. I have a lot of editors reach out to me all the time. Very happy with Draper. But still reach out. Because I connected this editor with Cami, and she needed just a very singular, editor, and that relation, has blossomed for her. And then the same with, Wind It Back, like I'm shooting their reactions and I'm sending them to Praper, and managing on their channel and helping them out. It's like holding the backseat of the bicycle. But eventually, they're in the process of building their own studio in Nikki's house, and will eventually be able to shoot reactions and send to me remotely as well. So it's just awesome to see the reactors. What it boils down to is awesome to see the reactors, taking things into their own hands, and creating their own channels. So that's the biggest thing I've seen is just watching people like see like I can do this. I can make money doing this. It's like this can be a job, a part-time job, maybe a full-time job. So that's really exciting. It's just to see the reactors, just once again, just grow in wanting to do more, and learning how to do it, and then just once again, just watching movies and just now being able to be like, oh, it's like, oh, now I know where that comes from. That's the best thing when they're watching a movie and they hear a line they've known their whole life. Yeah. And they're like, oh, that's from this? Good to know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Getting to see everything, flourish, within the channel, and everyone, find their own footing, to become their own reactor, and, find a steady, sort of living with it, is really beautiful, again, because I think the space is something that I love to see continue to grow. I love seeing people's new experience, like, because I think everyone brings a new light to the material. And for you, though, sort of getting into our final questions here, how do you feel you've grown over your time with the channel?
Sure. I mean, it's just I've learned, like I said, capturing the reactions and making sure I never, mess up getting a reaction. Like it's only happened like 2 or 3 times, like ever, and I take my pride on that. And keeping videos like clean of copyright, and if a video gets copyright claimed, to re-edit it and re-release it, so it's continuing, to earn, money for the reactors. I mean, because this is, we split, the revenue with the reactors on the channel, obviously, and just managing all those people and keeping track of all those reactions, and paying attention to what people want, and maybe posting in the community often enough, but not posting too much that people are annoyed by it, so there's the ebb and flow. I just think of like interacting with the online community, and then just sort of like sometimes the we released, we've had Leah doing Denis Villeneuve, she did Dune Part 1 and Part 2 and Blade Runner 2049, and then Sicario. And then I released like Prisoners, and like I was thinking like video is going to do so good, and like just flatlined right out of the gate. And Sicario did incredible, and it's just sort of like learning that nothing is a sure thing. And then sometimes I'll just release something to release it, and it'll just overperform, and so I think ultimately, and I think this saying goes in Hollywood, nobody knows anything. And the same can be said for YouTube channels and for the content that you create. And but you just have to you just have to also just like people have to cancel what you're reacting. You just have to like always have a plan in place. Right. To because people are things are going to come up, and that's the other thing with us. I have to have people come over here. They have to get into the room. We have to get them all ready to go. Where most reaction channels do it out of their own house. Like this, like we're doing. I just put a TV here and I'm reacting. But because it's more of a production with bringing most of the reactors into the space, getting that, and then the data management side of it, and making sure everybody is, like once again, just feeling like they're being taken care of, and that's, and I think it is just being a director. And luckily I have a lot of experience producing films, and it's very similar. A lot of that stuff, directing films, producing films, comes into play of just being on set and having 40 or 50 people to like kind of manage their happiness while they're making these movies. It's just a sort of a micro version of that. But yeah, I just like in the same as just once again, I'm just hearing their opinions on films, and that may differ from mine, and things that people really loved, and what people love sometimes can be surprising, and like that's always just exciting for me, of just kind of understanding the subjectivity of film that much more.
Right. Yeah. Now that might tie into our sort of final question in the main part of the interview here, which is beyond any monetary financial value, what would you say is the most rewarding of the most rewarding aspect of the channel for you?
I mean, to be honest with you, it's because, it's like my personal thing is because I do take care of my father, and I just really am at home all the time. And he's 84, and he's a retired fighter pilot, and served our country. And I really, because of my parents, I was able to move to New York and LA and do all the great things that I was able to do. Personally, it's just awesome creating these reactions for myself to watch, once again, like, I really want to, I really want to watch this movie again, and I want to see somebody feel this thing again, and I'll just do that particular thing, and in that sense, I just truly like feel like I am my customer. Right. It's like I know that what I am doing, so many people also would love to experience. So just being able to create that in of myself, and then just also have these amazing reactors as friends and collaborators. And we have a lot of other really cool stuff planned that we're doing, beyond the channel or within the channel, but, sort of like the original film we did, Possessions, like we're looking into doing some more interesting stuff in that area. And just continue to grow and collaborate, with other channels, and we have, to eventually do a podcast, to eventually, do, more interview segments, like with the reactors, and just as to what they've watched on the channel, give people the opportunity to get to know them more. Right. Maybe have them come on the show as well if you want, and talk to some of them individually. They all have their own unique experiences with why they are enjoying doing this. But that's pretty much it in a nutshell. In the meantime, I'm going to go back to editing Friends and get that ready for next week, and get Revenge of the Sith ready for Christmas Eve, and try and continue to drop good reactions that people want every day.
Yeah. We're getting to the holiday season, so I know that's the when the rush hits to try to get ahead a little bit, to take one day off at least sometime around Christmas. We do have a final questionnaire, which I give to everyone. I think it's still appropriate to give to you if it's 20 questions down the line. Just as fast as you want. If you want to elaborate, no pressure. Right. First question is, what's your favorite TV show of all time?
Seinfeld.
Classic pick. What's your favorite film of all time?
That's obviously such a loaded question, but I would just say, because it's December, Die Hard.
It's a great pick.
Behind me, so might as well. Obviously, I love it.
Appropriate pick. Question 3 is, what stresses you out?
What stresses me out? Copyright claims.
It's a common answer, but not an unfair one. Found evergreen is what it is.
Yeah.
Conversely, what helps you relax?
Watching a full watch along. Having nothing is greater than having somebody come in, shoot a reaction to something, because I have to check all these. That's like, I have to watch every single full watch along, because I got to make sure that they're good for Patreon. Right. So that is the relaxing part of the job, when I have the full watch along all built, edited it out up the channel, and then I can just kind of sit down and relax and put that on and just have it playing in the background while I do whatever I need to do on my phone, Instagram engagement or whatever, but I can just kind of watch that movie. And then in addition to that, using my AMC to go and see a movie out at the theater.
Right.
And keeping up with everything new that's coming out. Big shout out to Good Fortune. Everybody go see that movie. It was awesome.
I'll have to put it on my list to check out. This is a side question in addition to that last one. What is your preferred setting or format for a watch along? Because I know you said you do the times code sync that a lot of people do. Do you have it on a computer on 2 tabs? Or do you have on one screen, then a TV?
How do I do my watch alongs when I do them? Yeah, I have this MacBook Air on a little table next to my bed, and I have a projector that projects the movie on the wall. So I at least kind of feel like, once the pandemic started, I invested in the little home projector just to have it. And I live in the attic, and so I have these big white walls or whatever. And so so I kind of feel like I'm in the theater watching the movie. And then sometimes I will actually put the reactor on the screen with the movie or whatever, if I need to be doing something else on my computer at that time. Right. But just on a projector, with two, with an HDMI output into a projector from the computer.
That's good to know. Yeah. I'm always trying to perfect my watch along experience, so I'm always interested to learn more. Next question is, what hobby or passion outside of TV and film do you have?
I guess I would just say, I watch MLB baseball and NFL football. Those are my hobbies and passions. And I'm number one in my fantasy football league this year for the first time in a long time.
Congrats. What fictional character do you relate to or just care deeply about?
Yeah. So many. I would probably say I care the most about characters where I'm not happy with the direction of their characters and their franchises sometimes.
Right.
So Ellen Ripley in Alien and Aliens, just a huge, gigantic fan of those films. They were formative films for me. And not very happy with what happens to her character beyond that. So, Die Hard being my favorite film of all time, while I love Die Hard with a Vengeance and think it's a good movie, I do not like the direction that they took his character after the first two films. That was kind of soul crushing. And that's an interesting one because I hate what they did with his character in that movie, but I love that movie and think it's a good movie. I think very easily John could have been just in town testifying for a case. So when I start to think too much about like how I would have done it, that's when I know a character. So John McClane and Ellen Ripley are two sides of that coin.
Yeah, it's a good pick. Yeah, that's the tough thing for helping curate reactions for people. It's kind of, you kind of want to tell them like you could just maybe watch the first two, but then there's like the inclination to have to finish the franchise.
So Leah and Mia both, I had do Alien. We did Alien and we did Aliens, and then we did Prometheus and Covenant and Romulus, and then I had Leah do Alien Earth, and then she did Alien again with Nikki for the first time, which we have Nikki watch that to get us to our Spaceballs watch for that joke. And but at some point, Leah will now watch Alien 3 and Alien Resurrection next year after she rewatches Aliens with Nikki, which we're targeting for April 26th, obviously. And but I do but because I hate that so much, I don't want, and I have Leah watch Die Hard 1 and Die Hard 2 this year for Christmas, and we'll do Vengeance and Live Free for July 4th in the summer. But for now, I'm happy for her to just exist in that world, so there's a little bit of that. And there's a little bit of like, I'm not going to show them this movie because I don't like the direction, that this thing went in. But anyways, that's that question of that.
No, it all makes sense. Absolutely. What is your comfort show or film?
Seinfeld.
Yeah,
also Seinfeld, Community, King of Queens, Everybody Loves Raymond, News Radio. I would probably say, because I lived in Queens for a really long time, and so I always love like Everybody Loves Raymond is sort of like the having a family with kids, and King of Queens is like having a family without kids but living with your father-in-law or father. And I live with my dad now, so I really relate to that one now. And then Seinfeld is, and Friends also, I love Friends too, but that's like Friends is dating in your 20s, Seinfeld's dating in your 30s. And then News Radio is like just like the work environment of just remembering working in an office, so they're, just sort of, I lived in New York for 10 years. And so Seinfeld and Friends and King of Queens. And, so I like all those shows that take place in New York because I really just had such a affinity for living in that city for so long. And News Radio is also new. I never even thought about this before until I started listing off these shows, except for Community, and Community is probably my California.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. My girlfriend's from New York, so she always gets a kick out of seeing New York-based material.
Yeah, totally.
What show or film gave you your favorite reaction experience with the channel, I guess, as a viewer?
It's just so simple though. It's just anytime somebody watches Star Wars for the first time that really doesn't know, and I've had that luxury with Kobe and Nikki and Mia and really just that trilogy in of itself. And like what's awesome is they always are vaguely aware of the big reveal at the end of Empire, but they have no idea about the other connection that's revealed in Return of the Jedi. Right. So that's kind of awesome. I love, so anytime I see, I think it's just whenever I do a reaction with something that I know has like a big twist, that's always really cool for me, and when they really get something that they're, I hope they get, so there's just so many examples of that. But we just did 3 Men and a Baby actually for Wind It Back, because it just sort of in conjunction with Leah's watching Friends for the channel and getting to kind of Tom Selleck, and Nikki did Cheers for us, so she was familiar with Ted Danson. So I was kind of excited to show that movie for them to do that. But then they're kind of watching the movie, and I've always said, like, 3 Men and a Baby is kind of like Chandler and Ross and Joey, like they're kind of that swinging dating in the 80s version of those characters. And then Nikki said that like in the reaction, and I was like, yes, that's absolutely right. And they also like figured out they figured out they locked onto the cardboard cutout ghost.
Oh, right.
From 3 Men and a Baby.
Yeah.
Like I also like Nikki was vaguely familiar with, like, I think there's like a ghost in this scene or something. And then Leah's like, look at that cardboard cutout there. It's so weird that's in the background. But they didn't really know what it was. But I was like, that's what it was. People saw that cardboard cutout, and that was where the story of the ghost of 3 Men and a Baby came from. So anytime that, so there's just there's no one. There's just so many reactions like that just where they have that revelation moment, and that's awesome.
Right. The next question is mainly towards, I guess, someone who's watching, reacting for something, but maybe we could fit it for you as what show or film do you wish you could erase from your memory and react to again for the first time? You kind of get to relive that through everyone's experiences, I think. But
I mean, that's literally like what do I wish I could erase and relive, for the first time.
Yeah. 100%. I guess if you had to put yourself in the hot seat, if there's one that you could erase from your memory and react to yourself, I think what would it be?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's such a tough. Yeah. I mean, I just don't know. That's so many movies or whatever. But I'll just tell you right now, not really a conventional answer, and I haven't even done this one yet, but Nightcrawler is just one of my favorite movies, and it's actually my favorite LA movie. Of like, this is driving everywhere, and it's like, do we take Laurel Canyon, or we take Crescent, or we do the 101, or no, we need 10, and 110, and man, I love that, and just kind of running around and filming stuff, and it's almost like that guy is like the early reaction channel guy, that guy is like an early reaction channel guy, so it's like, I remember seeing that movie in LA, at that, like, this theater on Overland or something, but it was like North Hollywood Valley, or somewhere in the North Valley or whatever. But I remember seeing that movie for the first time and just being blown away by Jake Gyllenhaal's performance, and absolutely just where that movie goes. I just never. It was, as a writer, it was just like you kind of come out of a movie being like, I wish I wrote that. I wouldn't change one thing about that movie. It's like it's very few. It was like, because in the 1970s, there were all these movies where kind of like the villains were the hero to a certain extent. Jack Nicholson and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or Robert De Niro and Taxi Driver, the anti-hero thing. And I just felt like this is the first time I'd seen an anti-hero movie in forever. So I am going to be showing that to people on the channel, but I kind of hold it near and dear, special, and want to dole it out, at the right time. But I really feel like they've, have an appreciation for everything like that they would see in that movie. So that's my unconventional one that I would love to see again. Of course, Star Wars, I'd love to be able to re-experience the original Star Wars trilogy. Totally. That's the whole reason why I'm doing this.
Right.
I saw somebody do that, and I was like, wow, I wish I could feel what you felt.
Right. Yeah, no, Nightcrawler is a great pick. Actually, it's so funny. I actually just went on a Nightcrawler kick of reactions like a month ago. And so just out to Die Jesus, who I finally had on around that time. I got to watch theirs, and they had a really great reaction to it. So I would definitely recommend that one. The final question here is, what advice would you give to your past self if you can go back in time when you first started the channel?
Sure. Yeah. mainly just sort of some of like the earlier reactions or whatever, just um, it's all little technical things. Like I wish I would have said, "Oh, really need a denoiser on all of the audio of your reaction, your reactors." That would be great. We started off using a Zoom recorder. Everybody has different setups, and I was recording with just a Zoom recorder, wild sound, and then I bought a shotgun mic, and I was like, "Ooh, that's much better sound." So it was
Right.
little things like I just whatever the setup and the functionality that I have right now. And I actually learned a lot of that. It was kind of funny because I kind of did it with the Cassie Reacts channel. And then when I started this channel, I had made all those mistakes. So I was able to kind of do that time or whatever. And I kind of knew it's like rotating reactors and stuff. So,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, there's nothing, I mean, I just, there's no regrets, no regrets.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good advice to give to a past self is have no regrets. Just go give it a shot, see where the cards fall.
Fail up if you can.
Yeah. Jason, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. It was so great I could just vibe with you about the space and the format. It's always super fun to meet a genuine fan of the space.
No, likewise, man. Once again, when I was just so many of the people that you've had on the show or people that I've just been watching for years, and just huge fans of, and just it's awesome just to see the space continue to grow, and hopefully one day we can have a reactor fest, where all the reactors can come together and have our own little reactor con of some kind. I'm always hoping that that's going to come together. I know that there's probably a lot of people out there that want to engage with the community even more. So I feel like your show is kind of bringing a lot of us together, and feels like maybe the impetus of something that will happen, like I said, in the evolution of the space, in a couple of years, if not sooner.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean that has always been also a dream of mine, as a Reactor Con to put together at some point. So here's to hoping we'll get it done one day. Jason, where can we find you online? Also for Popcorn Roulette on social media, YouTube, anywhere otherwise?
Sure, yeah. Popcorn Roulette Reactions on Instagram. Popcorn Roulette on YouTube. Those are our main two space. We're always trying to create a TikTok and create more. I've been so focused on putting shoes in the shoe store, but creating reels, out of all of the reactions, and trying to do more reels and more YouTube shorts just to get it out there in the zeitgeist. So we're always ever growing. We're a very small operation. So hopefully, but yeah, I would say, look for us on YouTube, look for us on Instagram. Those are going to be our most active places at the moment, but hopefully more in the future. And check out the Kobe Show, check out Let's Tune In, check out Wind It Back, all those reaction channels that are thriving. And if you like some of the reactors that are on our channel, you can go see those reactors there. And there's just so much content that we're just trying to bring to everybody as a collective. And so check out those guys too, please.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll have links to everyone's channels below. Make sure you can click there. You can find me at Nerdchronic across social media. You can find us at the Reactorverse across social media as well. You'll find links to our Patreon, Discord down below. And we'll catch everyone on the next episode.